we're ready.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here on today. I am Reverend Kelly X. My name is spelled Kelli, last name X, just the letter. I am a pastor and a Christian. I am here as the pastor of the Village Church in Madison, Tennessee. As a Christian and pastor, I believe that parents and youth deserve to make their own medical decisions in privacy with their doctors. Jesus called those of us who claim to have the Christian faith not to not only love their neighbors as themselves, but also to protect the marginalized and vulnerable in our communities. Yet, here we have elected leaders and conservative commentators who have borne false witness and told lies in an attempt to win elections, to distract from their lack of caring for the vulnerable in our communities, and instead further victimize those whom Jesus calls us to love, care for, and protect. Yes. They spread false and dangerous rhetoric, putting transgender youth, doctors, and our local children's hospital at risk, while neglecting their job to care for people. This is just another example of being willing to use the vulnerable as a source of attacks and pawns in their political games. They pass and defend laws that outlaw every abortion without exception, forcing children who are already victims of rape to be forced to give birth, no matter what trauma they have already been through. And they have allowed the Department of Children's Services to be on the brink of collapse, with vulnerable children sleeping on the floors of the DCS office while they are understaffed and underpaid, let me say, as a former DCS employee, as children suffer the consequences of these horrible decisions. And now they have decided to make transgender youth the next source of their attack, denying them medical care that is recommended by medical agencies, and want to make medical decisions for these teenagers and their parents, all while using fear-mongering and dangerous talking points. These politicians and pundits claim the Christian faith while neglecting their first call as Christians to love. I'm reminded of the prophet Isaiah, who said in Isaiah 1:13-20 in the Message Bible, "Quit your worship charades. I can't stand your trivial religious games, monthly conferences, weekly Sabbaths, special meetings. I can't stand one more. Meetings for this, meetings for that. I hate them. You've worn me out. I'm sick of your religion, while you go right on sinning. When you put on your next prayer performance, yes, I'll be looking the other way. No matter how long or loud or often you pray, I will not be listening. And don't you know why? Because you have been tearing people to pieces and your hands are bloody. Go home and wash up. Clean up your act. Sweep your lives clean of your evil doing so that I don't have to look at them anymore. Say no to wrong. Learn to do good. Work for justice. Help the down and out. Stand up for the homeless. Go to bat for the defenseless. So today, as a pastor, I am demanding that Senator Marsha Blackburn, Senator Jack Johnson, and anyone participating or encouraging victimization of children of God to stop their attacks and actually follow the words of Christ instead of their prayer performances while tearing about the people they have been elected to serve. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Amy Gordon Bono.
Y'all have to excuse me. I've been using my voice just a little bit too much lately, apparently. I wish the world didn't require that all the time. I'm honored to be a part of so many families' journeys to find health care. And sadly, in my home state, politicians continue to attack our health care time and time again. The chronic intrusions of politicians into the sacred space of the patient-physician relationship leads me to speak out yet again today. These politicians attack our healthcare to further their own agendas rather than serve the citizens of our state. Over the past years, we have seen politicians elevate lies rather than truly study an issue and attempt to formulate effective public policy. These politicians even twist the concept of freedom only to concentrate their own power. In Tennessee, we value our freedoms. Freedom to make decisions that are best for our children. Freedom for our kids to learn and be themselves. Freedom to access medical care for ourselves and our children. And freedom to decide whether and when to grow our families. And our families do not abuse these responsibilities. We all want to make sure our children are healthy and happy. Our teachers and healthcare professionals, they do want what is best for our children. The long-term health of our children and the world that they will live in is vitally important. Rather than being distracted by manufactured controversies, shouldn't we focus on supporting getting the kids the support and the healthcare that they indeed need? But sadly, that's not the focus of some of our politicians. Andy Ogles and some members of our General Assembly are trying to scare us with false claims. False claims about our children and their families because they are worried about their elections. These politicians are spreading hateful messages and lies about Vanderbilt Medical Center, a renowned Tennessee institution that we are all proud of, in order to distract from the complete failure on their part to protect vulnerable children who really are in need. Like the 10-year-old rape victim or trafficking victim that they want to force to give birth, or children who could lose their mother because she cannot get the abortion that she needs to save her life. Tennessee's doctors and nurses care about people's health, and we're committed to delivering the best health care possible. As a mom, I know it's a tough job to keep your kids growing up healthy, happy, and whole. And it's important that parents and children have support from healthcare professionals and educators who are able to do their best for our kids without having to place themselves in harm's way and suffer threats and intimidation. Children shouldn't fear going to school or going to a healthcare facility because extremists are whipping up potentially dangerous outrage. And physicians providing this needed care to children, they shouldn't fear simply helping their patients either. We see through their lies. Right-wing extremists hurl insults at educators, doctors, nurses, and mental health professionals because that's all they have to offer. After years of trying to stigmatize LGBTQ for the Tennesseans, trying to take health care away from people who are pregnant, and now criminalizing physicians and healthcare workers for providing necessary health care to our pregnant patients. We all want a Tennessee where doctors and nurses who save lives don't face jail times and fines, where a child is not forced to give birth to the rapist's offspring, and where our most vulnerable are protected, and where parents are free to make decisions that are best for their children. We want a Tennessee with freedom for ourselves to decide what is best for our families without interference from politicians. We need leadership that lifts us up along our life's path. We don't need leaders breaking us down and dividing us. We need leaders expanding our access to health care, not inhumanely restricting it, And we don't need leaders criminalizing or villainizing our physicians for providing that life-saving care. And I thank you for this opportunity to defend healthcare in Tennessee today. I'm Dr. Amy Gordon Bono, AMYGORDON, BONO, O'Hoffman. Sorry if I forgot to say that at the beginning. And I believe we have you next, right?
Let's hope you can hear me louder than my asthma today. I'm Anna Caudill, ANNACAUDILL, and I'm a children's disability advocate. Thank you, Marcus. And a special education advocate and an adoptive mom. I live here in Nashville. And when our church community helped us adopt 2 disabled young boys, I had no idea how challenging that would be. I was unprepared for the crushing feeling of helplessness every time that a doctor said one of them needed surgery, or that I saw them in pain and was powerless to change that. More than once, our Sunday school class prayed us through, reminding me that we were never alone, but that we were seen and loved. We always took our few vacations that we planned around being close to a children's hospital, and we used to joke that the Ronald McDonald House was our summer home. We persevered in no small part thanks to the dedicated child life specialists, pediatric nurses, and physicians of children's hospitals. Because of them, my children are not afraid when they head to a hospital for annual ultrasounds or lab work. Because of them, my sons trust that when they enter a children's hospital, they are safe. That's why I cannot understand why any elected person would use our trust, betray our trust, to ever try to put Vanderbilt Children's Hospital patients or their physicians in danger. When several Tennessee officials joined forces recently regarding claims that Vanderbilt Children's does reassignment surgeries on children without parental consent, the hospital said us it was untrue. And before Vanderbilt confirmed to legislators that they have treated an average of 5 patients a year since 2018, none are younger than 16, and none involve the alterations that our politicians are claiming. And then Senator Blackburn joined Tennessee's GOP leadership to echo those lies. Setting aside how many children that is, their ages, or how Vanderbilt would even guarantee payment for surgeries performed without parental consent. Come on. There's the very real danger that those lies can cause. A similar campaign last month focused against Boston Children's Hospital, and within days, a woman was arrested for calling in a bomb threat. I have lived through a hospital lockdown, and you never want to be in a lockdown with your child in the hospital when you're helpless to leave that room. It was 2 a.m, and a woman made a threat against the hospital that my child was in traction at. We had been in traction for 6 weeks. He had weights hanging off the edge of the bed. He was 7 years old. 2 a.m, police started filing past the room as an announcement was made that our floor was on lockdown. And I sat there, I pulled the blinds, and a nurse slid into our room, sobbing in terror, to try to quiet my son's monitors so that the beeping didn't draw attention that we didn't want. As more police filed past, I tried to gauge whether I could move his hospital bed into the patient bathroom, whether it would buy us a few more seconds of life, or whether that would even matter. I couldn't believe that we had been through the hell of having a pelvic reconstruction surgery and being in traction for 6 weeks to die like this. And there wasn't a thing I could do to help my baby except hope that he could sleep through it and not carry that trauma in his precious holy body. Governor Lee, Senators Marsha Blackburn and Jack Johnson, and Representative William Lambert know what happened last month at Boston Children's Hospital. They know what happens to people like me. They're experienced enough to know that that day when that bomb threat was called in, there were children terrified in their hospital rooms, that chemo was postponed, that ambulances were diverted. There's no responsible way to represent Tennesseans or the children who come from all over the world for care at one of America's top 10 pediatric hospitals. Children's hospitals are not a political battleground. They're not your political battleground. They're a place for children to go and be healthy and to talk with their doctors about what's going on with their bodies. And if you're a young person listening to this, you are the most important part of your healthcare team.
Yes.
When it comes to decisions about what's happening with your body, whether you have a disability or you need surgery or you're here for chemo, you have questions that you want answered, and you have a right to know that you and your doctor can make a good plan for your body in a place that's safe for you, and that you won't be threatened by somebody's midterm election games. Even though I have questions about what age-appropriate healthcare looks like for young people with gender dysphoria, I know without a doubt that politicians should not be the ones making these life-altering decisions for teens and their parents. My Bible doesn't have a part that says true religion is this, to scare the hell out of children in hospitals. And as a Christian and as a mother to 2 boys whose lives depend on safe hospitals, I know we can and should have these conversations without resorting to lies or terrorizing children or their doctors. I expect my elected officials to keep children safe from domestic terror threats, not to provoke them for the sake of winning a midterm. Thank you. Oh, and it is my honor to introduce Marcus Thurman, a very brave young person.
My name is Marcus Thurman. I'm 20 years old, and I'm a transgender college student in Tennessee. I've grown up here pretty much my whole life. I recently started testosterone, and as of today, it is my 3rd week on it. I had a double mastectomy a year ago when I was 19. When I was 13 years old, I came out as transgender to my peers at school. Of course, there was bullying and harassment. Of course, there was misunderstandings and confusion. But at the end of the day, my classmates would still come to me with questions rather than with hatred. The people who came to me with fear in their eyes and hatred in their voices were not my classmates, but were my classmates' parents and other authority figures. People who do not understand the experience tend to fear it and decide that they yet somehow still understand it nonetheless. There is no child who is going through intensive hormone therapy at the age under 17. That is A, illegal, and B, incredibly hard to do, let alone in the state of Tennessee. There's a lot of misconceptions about how medically transitioning works. And a big topic in the news today, not only discussed by Marsha Blackburn and Jack Johnson, but others as well, is puberty blockers. And yet no one seems to know what they actually do when they discuss them. Puberty blockers are not evil. They are not permanent. They are there to basically pause puberty until you know which puberty you want to go through. Yeah. I never had to go on puberty blockers. I never had the option, and now I have had a completely full puberty through estrogen, and I am now starting one with testosterone. It is much harder on my body to do this if it would have, other than if I had started with puberty blockers. When I was 14, a year into being out, I was sexually assaulted on the basis of the fact that I'm transgender. Is that what you want for your kids? Do you want your kids to suffer? Do you want them to feel alone, like they can't turn to authority figures for fear of judgment because of the slander that politicians will use against my community, against people like me, against your own children, in the name of protecting them? What are you doing to protect them when you have these legislations and you call together these fearfully motivated marches? You're not protecting anyone. I have not been able to attend my medical appointments in person for fear of shootings and bomb threats. Which would you rather see your child maimed by? A surgery that helps them feel more comfortable in their own skin when they are older and their body is more grown, or a bullet? I've also had 2 brain surgeries. These are obviously unrelated to my gender, but my body has been through a lot of stress, and I still chose to transition. Because it is not a luxury, or it shouldn't be. It is a right. People claim that people do it without parents' consent and permission. Insurance barely covers anything when it comes to medically transitioning. How the hell do you expect your kids to just do this behind your back? It's nearly impossible to do it with your consent. You are delusional, and you are looking for people to blame in a time of fear. I have been diagnosed with clinical PTSD, and I take medication for it. I have nightmares almost every single night about the horrors that I experienced through high school and middle school for being transgender. This was not something I choose to experience, and if I really wanted to, I could have taken it back. I could have said, never mind, it was just a phase. But I have not backed down from my identity. I've not backed down from who I am since I was 13 years old. And I do not plan on doing so anytime soon. We are not going anywhere. Your children are not going to change who they are for you. And if you think otherwise, have fun trying to contact them after they turn 18. You're not protecting children. You are protecting yourselves from the unknown. And you are willfully keeping it as the unknown to yourselves. There is information out there that is not backed by sources that are filled with bigotry and hatred and fear-mongering. There are sources out there with real education that are backed by medical science, and they are at your disposal. If you truly care for your children, and if you truly care for their future, you will actually educate yourself and learn. My parents have always been supportive, even when they did not understand. And when they didn't understand, we would have a dialogue. And when that was not satisfactory, because I was still a child, they would ask medical professionals, psychological counselors. Turn to people who are educated, not to people who benefit off of fear-mongering. We're not going anywhere. Thank you.
Do you all have any questions for us?
I think what's the next steps for you all as far as this whole situation happening at the hospital? Or are there next steps?
You know, we're not here today to speak for the hospital. We're here to speak today as individuals that are very concerned for the health care in our state. So our next steps are to unify and keep marching, preferably to the voting booths. Everybody.
Yes. I just had a question. I know you talked about it a little, and you can answer at the podium. How often do you worry about your safety? On any level?
On any level?
Yeah.
I'd say nearly every day. The amount of threats of violence that I have experienced have drastically gone down as I've gotten older, as I've had more control over my social standing in circles. But that doesn't mean they're gone. That doesn't mean I don't experience them still. I worry every day for my safety, and it got to the point in high school where I wanted to take martial arts. I wanted to be able to defend myself. But there's only so much you can do when it's no longer individuals who are against you, but it's an ideology, it's a movement. I hope that answers your question.
And for anyone standing up here, has anyone tried to reach out, send an email, phone call to any of these legislators, including Governor Bill Lee? Anyone can answer the question.
I've tried to reach out to the governor's chief of staff, and I haven't heard back any response yet. And and I'm going to loop this in, if you don't mind, to your question as well. As a children's disability advocate, I'm finding that within election cycles like these, where we see one wave of misinformation after another, the children who fall through the cracks and are repeatedly marginalized are Black and brown and disabled children. And I think our collapsing DCS department right now is a proof of that. And so my next step is to try to encourage legislators to not focus on forcing themselves into healthcare conversations for 5 children a year, but to focus on the children who are sleeping in state offices, the children in state custody who are living in hospitals because there aren't foster parents for them to go home to and they require specialized care, and for the children at Wilder Youth Development Center who are primarily, the majority of those young people are disabled, they're in state custody, and we've heard for months now about how they've had bounties placed on their heads to fight one another, and there's been no action taken. And I'm ready to move on from focusing on an average of 5 young people a year in their health care to the responsibilities that the state has to its people.
Question. I saw in the article you guys had said with one of the people that transitioned that it is a long process. If you can or anyone can share, I mean, just how long does it take and how much does it go through for those approvals? It seems like people think it's just a quick and easy thing.
Hi everyone, my name is Reverend RJ Robles. That's RJ and ROBLES. My gender pronouns are he, they, them, theirs. I am a 30-year-old transgender male, non-binary. I transitioned or started this social and medical transition over 10 years ago. I came out to the community when I was, to myself, when I was 16, and to the community when I was 18. I then continued on with my journey, living as a college student, and then speaking here today as a Vanderbilt alumni from Vanderbilt Divinity School. I am here to say that, you know, transition takes its time. There's no one framework for an individual. I'd say it's a case-to-case basis. My transition looked like stages. That's what I would refer to them as, such as legally changing my name and the process that took through Davidson County, through the court system here, to then, and I remember, you know, having to raise funds for that. This is not a free process, right? To legally change my name, I ended up paying the court system $600-something of court fees just to legally change my name, my first name. And then to be able to do other things such as getting on testosterone and seeing the changes that my body was going through for a couple of years. You know, it's really not until recently where I've been observing a lot of just changes within myself, and thankful for hormone therapy, right? Thankful for other access to gender affirming surgeries that I was able to have here at Vanderbilt myself. Back in 2017, I had my top surgery And if it wasn't for access to that as a college student, I wouldn't have been able to, I probably still wouldn't be here today speaking to you all. And still having to fight for our rights, still having to fight for the community, still having to fight for gender access to gender affirming healthcare. It shouldn't be at this point. It shouldn't be this way, right? We have guidelines such as the WPATH that informs physicians, nurses, and doctors about how to take care of and treat transgender patients across the spectrum, whether you identify as transfeminine, transmasculine, or non-binary. There are particular guidelines for both adults and youth, and so that is an issue when trans youth are under attack. What do?
Stand back.
Exactly. We stand up and fight back, and this is another moment. It is a political moment, a trans political moment, where the community is having to stand up and fight back yet again, right? We went from, Tennessee has gone from historically, when you look at the politics that have negatively impacted the transgender community, you look at stuff like the bathroom bills. The bathroom bills coming up every year, anti-trans bathroom bill, and now it seems like conservatives have left that issue and gone on and attacked transgender youth and their access to gender affirming healthcare. So I just encourage folks to get acclimated, to get educated, to know about trans issues, to know about trans people in your community, and to fight for us and alongside us.
Show too, you can't just walk into this hospital and just demand. That takes time.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've done this as an adult, but this is further show there's even more hurdles as a child you can go through all of this.
Exactly. And there are rules and there are informed consent, right? And there's also parental consent. So, just a reminder as this conversation continues to get sort of out of place, out of touch with reality and the rules and the policies that are already set in place. As this youth was telling us, this young person was telling us, you just cannot access gender affirming healthcare without parental consent. So just a reminder and a precaution to the mass media, because also mass media needs to report this accurately. If you're talking about our community, make sure you're speaking to our community. Thank you.
Yeah, I forgot to mention. I use he, him pronouns. And my name, I forgot to spell earlier, is spelled M-A-R-K-U-S, and Thurman is T-H-U-R-M-A-N.
When trans youth are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
When trans youth are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back. Thank you all so much for coming out today and covering this. So we
I know. I'm glad I
I did theological debate throughout high school.
You know when to pause, you know when to breathe.
I'm doing an interview.
It'll take 1 minute.
Is that you need to clip that in there or something?
I'm gonna hit stop on the thing.